What's up, everybody? Derek Anderson, the DA. So you knew this. They was gonna pull this card, right? They was gonna pull the old "they don't like powerful black women" card. You knew that was coming. And here's the latest opinion piece from CNN Opinion. What the calls to boycott the Woman King are really saying. You know what they're saying? They're saying the words that are coming out of these folks' mouths. Quit trying to read between the lines, okay? Women always think they're good at reading between the lines. Sometimes, ladies, you just got to take it at face value and just say, hey, what these guys are saying is what they're saying. There's nothing else to see here, okay? Quit trying to find the hidden message or whatever, okay? We didn't write it in invisible ink. We put it right there on Twitter. This is what these guys are saying, all right? I put my video out. I said what I had to say about it, and I'll link that above. But I feel like I gave it a fair review, okay? Because number one, I just looked at it as, okay, we're just gonna take this as a piece of art, okay? A story, a dramatic story, and that's all we're gonna do. Had good performances. I thought the music was phenomenal. The action pieces, you know, the set pieces for action. There's a lot of quick cuts, so I didn't like the way that was edited. I thought that was poorly done. It had decent direction, but it was just an underwhelming script and an underwhelming story. If they had actually stuck to the real legitimate history of the Agojis and the Dahomies, I thought that this would have been a much better movie, okay? But because they chose to gloss over that, it hurt the script, it hurt the overall story, and so I gave it about a middle of the road, okay? Good performances, good music, solid direction, but, you know, lacked a little bit in the story pieces, and then, of course, lacked a little bit in the action. I thought it was all right movie. But, you know, it's not good enough. No, they just hate powerful black women. That's what it's all about. So let's go ahead and read this quick little article. Not gonna take very long. So this lady starts off talking about in the first couple of paragraphs about how she was happy that this movie was coming out, inspired by, you know, some kind of true events. The Woman King was directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, had Viola Davis in it, John Boyega's in it, but then she gets to the boycotts, right? But there are calls to boycott the film because to its critics, even though it's not calling for a boycott, it underplays the role played by the Dahomey Kingdom in the Atlantic slave trade. In their eyes, this fictional film, inspired by true events, doesn't tease out enough information about a horrific history, the kidnapping and sales of Africans by the Dahomey and Oyo kingdoms. That is, in the film's narrative, a subplot, while the main storyline centers on a group of badass African women living, loving, and laboring together to ensure their people remain free. You know, it's not a documentary, right? It's a movie is essentially a piece of art that's telling a dramatic story, right? So it doesn't need to have all of the nooks and crannies of the entire history, but to say that the sale of the Africans was a subplot, like, that's being super generous. This thing really enters like footnote territory, okay? Like, they stray far away, like how the Dahomies kept slaves from the sales. They didn't even talk about that. Like, they didn't discuss how they brutally murdered and beheaded people in ceremonial rituals. They had nothing to do with that, okay? And the slaves that they couldn't use, if they caught them, this person ain't no good, off with their heads. They just used them for human sacrifices. Nothing about that. And the slavery that is discussed doesn't affect any of the characters around them, with the exception of Naniska, who is Viola Davis. And the only time she ever brings it up is like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing this no more. You know, let's try to find another industry that we could do other than this, which absolutely doesn't make sense when you think about it, but I'll get to that point later. The period of the Dahomey's most intense involvement in the slave trade included the trafficking of West Africans in the late 17th and early 18th century, primarily by taking prisoners who were then enslaved abroad by European traders. The real King Gezo ultimately agreed to end Dahomey's participation in the slave trade in 1852 under pressure from the British government, which had abolished slavery in 1833. Now, you see this right here, folks? This is wordplay, all right? This is wordplay. She's trying to make it sound less than it is, all right? This is wordplay, all right? Taking prisoners who were then enslaved abroad. Like, whoa. Okay, you're saying like somehow these prisoners ended up getting enslaved over there. What happened to them when they were in Africa, right? You don't want to talk about that. They were sold into slavery on the beaches of Africa. Quit trying to make it sound like, oh, well, you know, that all that slavery stuff happened after they got out of Africa and they went over there by the European traders. That's what they trying to, you know, slickly word it. It was their biggest source of income. Slaves were their best export. They were sold on African beaches. It wasn't like they said, well, we'll just let these European guys take our prisoners and we don't know what's going to happen to them after that. They know exactly what was going to happen. They were slavers. They kept slaves. All right? Let's just call it what it is, all right? You don't have to lie. You could just admit the history. It's okay. The Atlantic slave trade is hardly overlooked in the movie. Yeah, right. However, at the beginning of the film, Davis's character Naniska admonishes the king for allowing his people and other Africans to be involved in the business. She spends the entire film talking about how wrong it is to sell your own people and offers alternatives to the barbaric practice. The climax of the film involves the Agoji freeing Africans who are about to be transported to the New World. And I suppose it probably really depends upon your point of view. If your point of view is silly, you'll probably take her stance. But yeah, she's correct. It isn't overlooked, but the horrors of slavery and all the stuff that was actually going on at that particular time are just completely glossed over. All right? It is historically inaccurate. And you see, that's the whole thing about it. It's like this idea that the Agoji warriors who had no problems, right? Like hacking their enemies up, cutting their heads off, chopping them up, killing them with all the brutality that they could possibly do, somehow selling them into slavery. Oh, whoa. That's a bridge too far. We can't do that, King. We got to figure out something else. We can't just keep on selling these people into slavery. It's just wrong. Bullshit. Again, this is a country that had their own slaves. It's like, come on. And the general, Naniska, the general of the army, in all likelihood, she had slaves. So to say that this is just stupid, like that's the stuff that pisses me off. It's like, okay, you want to tell this little female empowerment fantasy story? Fine. But don't come behind us saying, oh, well, she really didn't like slavery. Now, nobody's buying that, all right? That was the worst part of the character to me, because I'm like, I can't buy this. I can't buy this chick isn't into slavery. She's cutting dudes up, slough off with your head, motherfucker, and then, we can't sell these guys into slavery. Nah, we can't do that. Nah, that's wrong. Get out of here. Like the fact that the British and the French actually had to make this nation stop selling slaves, that should tell you everything that you need to know, okay? It's not like they quit on their own, all right? They had to be forced to stop selling slaves. Come on, man. Come on, lady. Just stop. Just stop the nonsense. The film is historically bullshit. That's all it is. Just say it. Just say it. Admit it and move forward. That's all you got to do. And that's what people are upset about. That's why people are saying boycott the film, because number one, they don't like the fact that they were being looked at as villains, that the Africans were actually enslaving their own people. Black folks don't like that, number one. And then number two, it's just a bunch of BS. Isn't it interesting that some of those calling most loudly for the boycott are black men? Here come the black man attacks, right? Where were similar calls about films like 12 Years a Slave, Django Unchained, or The Good Lord Bird, films about the slave trade giving copious creative license in their portrayal of characters, storylines, and the institution of slavery itself? She must be new to the game. She must just got here like last week. She obviously hasn't been covering film or watching film or being in any kind of social entertainment space whatsoever. Because like this stuff has just been going around. There goes Snoop Dogg slamming Roots 12 Years a Slave, okay? I remember this stuff like it was yesterday. It took me like a 5-minute Google search to find it as well. Here goes Spike Lee said he was boycotting Tarantino's Django Unchained. And that wasn't the only ones, okay? Everybody, I had people in my neck of the woods, folks that I knew says, man, I'm not watching that stuff, okay? Because black people were already at that point saying, man, we getting tired of playing these crooks. We getting tired of playing gangsters. We getting tired of playing slaves and mammies. Black people have been saying that probably for the better part of 20 years. So every time a film like this comes out, they kind of feel like, nah, I'm not with it, okay? And calls for boycotts are going to constantly come out when it comes to stuff like that, especially slavery, okay? Especially slavery, because it hits us in the wrong spot. So people have been saying this stuff. I don't know what this lady is talking about, man. I guarantee, man, it takes a 5-second Google search, lady. 5 seconds on Google. You can shut all of these stupid little arguments up in your own head. Oh, I better not type that up. Better erase that and go in another direction, okay? Yeah, people have been trying to boycott these films. Get the hell out of here. And as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and read what some of the black men are saying on Twitter. This is here says, Mr. Lewis gave a witness account to Zora Hill Hurston of the genocide inflicted on his community by the Dahomey Agoji. Mr. Lewis did not get reparations for his enslavement. This guy, Chief of Gold Coast and Ghana, apologizes for their role in the slave trade. Hollywood, let's make a film that glorifies the African slave trading tribe that's responsible for selling close to 20% of all Africans to the New World. Boycott Woman King. Yeah, again, these are the arguments that they don't want to talk about. I will boycott Woman King, the movie. Never forget, is not a slogan. It's a call to action from the ancestors. You can't repackage the Dahomey Kingdom, whose economy was built on slave trading, and expect support from the children of the slaves. Dahomey kings presided over human sacrifices, beheading of slaves in their grand customs, and the Ekke Mu'a Tome ceremony. 3 ceremonies with the dual purpose: pacifying the war god, honoring ancestors, and insensitivity training for female troops. Wow. That's why they're talking about the boycott, okay? Let's be honest, folks. It's a movie about an African tribe famous for selling slaves to Europeans that was made into a female empowerment story by 2 white women writers. You don't have to be very woke to see the problem here. So again, these guys are telling you specifically what their arguments are, all right? And you don't want to address those. You want to tiptoe and dance around it. You don't really want to deal with the issues. And the fact is that you're wrong. People have been asking for boycotts. Every time there's a movie about slavery, somebody's going to come out and ask for a boycott. Meanwhile, critics calling for a more realistic representation of the slave trade might direct their energies elsewhere. They might focus on the fact that, for instance, that school systems across the United States are taking steps to erase its reality and legacy from curricula. Oh my God. Or that many Americans dismiss it as being no big deal when discussions about slave return reparations. You know what? Like, straight up. It's just ironic, right? Like, she's saying, yeah, like, okay, speaking of erasing slavery's legacy and reality, okay, from history, yeah, speaking of that, that's literally what this film is trying to do, okay? It's just gonna completely ignore the reality and the legacy of the Dahomey tribe and just talk about female empowerment and yay, go girls. That's what it's doing. The only difference, in my opinion, is that it is a little bit worse because this is a part of history that is rarely discussed and focused upon, all right? It's something that we rarely talk about, the African side of the slave trade. We don't look at the folks that were out there in Africa dragging their prisoners out to the beach and getting some trade for them. We never talk about that. It's kind of interesting that in this era of, you know, CRT and tell the truth. What, are you afraid of the truth, okay? Why are you afraid of the truth? Why don't you tell the truth, okay? It's funny how that, all of that talk is always kind of kicked around, all right? And yet here comes a movie that should have done exactly that. And with pride, right? With your chest poked out, like, yeah, we're unafraid, all right? We'll show you how it's done. We're gonna tell the real history of what was going down over there in Africa, and we're unafraid to tell that history, all right? I would have actually said, you know what? Hey, at least you're consistent. Here you are telling the hard, unapologetic truth. That would have been something I would have said, hey, you know what? Bravo. At least you're not afraid to deal with what you're talking about. But oh, apparently that only goes one way. Or that the slave trade has been historically misrepresented in television and film for over 100 years. What? See films like Birth of the Nation, Gone with the Wind, TV classics like Uncle Tom's Cabin and Roots. Okay, so I guess you guys are just carrying on with the tradition, right? You're carrying on with the traditions of not depicting slavery as it should be, okay? All right? Misrepresenting slavery in the history of television and film. I guess the tradition continues, right? Because this film did exactly the exact same thing, right? It did the same thing, all right? All right? It misrepresented true history, all right? That's what it did, okay? That's man. Like I was saying, like, this movie is like it has a C- script, okay? It has a C- script. It has some good performances, okay? Especially, like I said, Lashana Lynch, thought she did a great job. This is like probably one of the best roles I've ever seen her play in. This film, even though I completely reject, that's why I can look at it from a script perspective and a story perspective and say, you guys missed a ton of opportunities to tell a much better story, and you gave me this watered down version of what this story should have been. I think that is terrible, and I'm gonna grade it accordingly, but at the same time, I can overhear and say, hey man, these actresses did a great job. This script lacks the necessary ambition to tackle this type of topic. They probably shouldn't have made it at all. All they did was just say, well, we're just going to make this into a fantasy film about female empowerment, and from that standpoint, it's garbage. But music's great, technically directed very nicely, has some great performances. It could have been brave, it could have went all out, but instead it chose to falsify and gloss over like some really important history in exchange for black girl warrior magic. That's what they did. I suspect that much of the criticism and most of the efforts to suppress this film are really about the portrayal of powerful black women warriors fighting and winning battles in a Hollywood that is still overwhelmingly white and male. Nah, see, you had it right the first time. You're saying most of the efforts to suppress this film are really about the portrayal of powerful black women. No, it's not. No, it's not. It was Black Twitter that started this. Nobody else cared about this crap. No one else cared about winning battles in Hollywood. That's overwhelmingly right. No, they said exactly what it was about. They didn't like the fact that this particular film was just going to gloss over history or try to make these women into heroes. That's what they said, all right? And the fact that you think that Hollywood would have some kind of issue with this, Hollywood is woke as hell. All the critics and the Hollywood types, man, they loving this shit. What are you talking about? What rock are you living under? As much as it is about anything else, The Woman King is about the precarious journey Black women take and the obstacles they face in pursuit of freedom and self-determination. In a world where misogyny and misogynoir reign supreme. Isn't that hilarious? So yeah, they pursued their own freedom while they were literally denying other people their freedom and their pursuit of freedom and their pursuit of self-determination. That's what was going on in the movie, or at least that's what should have been going on. The part that they just kind of skimmed over. That's the reality of the history. And look, throwing misogyny and misogynoir around like the word has any meanings anymore, it doesn't, okay? That word doesn't have any meaning anymore, all right? You guys have used it too much. It's just like I was saying, you guys don't like Black women card, okay? They throw that card out there. They've thrown the misogyny card out there. These cards have no value anymore. It's like an old expired coupon. You've already used it. It's gone. It's done, all right? Try something else. Try something new. And these arguments are just hilarious at this point. It's sad though, but look, there are ways to deal with these types of stories without glossing over the horrors of history and slavery like they did. They could have showed these women for exactly who they were, warts and all, and told an actual real story, and that would have been powerful, all right? But where's the Black girl magic in that? We would have to condemn them and make them seem like just evil people, and we didn't want to do that. So we had to tell this other fake story about warrior princesses doing their thing. Like, and look, you can go and watch this movie and it's fine. I don't think anybody that watches this movie is going to hate themselves after they watch it, all right? Just recognize that it is schmucky, silly fantasy for, you know, women, all right? It's a female empowerment fantasy story. If you just say, all right, I'm just going to take my history head out and I'm just going to look at this like this is Xena, you'll be fine. Okay, trust me, you'll be fine. It's not a horribly made movie. Okay, dialogue a little shaky, but other than that, you know, it's watchable. You know, you can watch it and be like, all right, you know, or if you don't want to watch it, that's fine too. You're not really missing much, but at the same time, let's stop making the conversation about what it ain't. All right, there's a real movie that could have been made here. They took the cheap way out. That's what it is. But anyway, folks, what do you think about this whole thing about the Black girls being mad because everybody's boycotting, or people are talking about boycotting this movie because, and they're just going to come out with all of the feelings in the world, make up lies, make up stories, and not really have like a really honest heart-to-heart conversation about the stuff. Like, that's the problem. You know, instead of letting the actual criticism come to the forefront and address it with facts, okay? You got some facts that I don't know about or that I need to know about, let's go ahead and address it. But to change the conversation to misogyny and sexism, man, that's why we're losing, okay? That's why this society is losing, because people want to write disingenuous bullshit like this particular article, okay? And that's the problem. But anyway, folks, what do you think about this whole situation? Go ahead, leave me your thoughts and your opinions in the comments below. And thanks for watching. See you next time.